The capture the Vorthok had ruled their corner of the galaxy for over 3,000 years, and in all that time they had never encountered a species quite like the humans. Not that they knew this yet, of course. To them, the pale, relatively hairless bipeds from the third planet of a yellow star were simply the latest addition to their collection. High Admiral Zekthar stood before the massive viewing screen in his command vessel, watching the blue-green world spin slowly below, his forearms crossed behind his back, the ceremonial hunting spear at his side catching the artificial light. The Vorthok were impressive creatures, standing nearly 8 feet tall with natural armor plating that covered their reptilian skin. Their eyes, 6 in total, could track multiple targets simultaneously, and their reflexes were honed by millennia of predation. The specimens show adequate physical capability, reported Sub-Commander Vex, her voice carrying the characteristic hiss of their species. Bipedal locomotion, basic tool use, rudimentary technology. They should provide several cycles of entertainment before the stock is depleted. Zekthar nodded approvingly. The Great Hunt was the cornerstone of Vorthok society. Every year, their empire would discover a new species, capture representative samples, and release them into carefully controlled hunting preserves. It was sport, entertainment, and a demonstration of Vorthok's superiority all rolled into one. The previous year's specimens, the Kalari from the Andromeda sector, had lasted only 6 cycles before they were completely eliminated. Perhaps these humans would prove more interesting. Begin the collection, Sektor commanded. Standard protocol. Mixed demographics. Various geographical locations. We want a representative sample of their capabilities. The abduction began at dawn across 5 continents. Massive Vorthok transports decloaked above major population centers, their gravity wells creating localized storms that sent humans fleeing in panic. But there was nowhere to run. The Vorthok had perfected this process. Over centuries, tractor beams swept through cities, towns, and rural areas alike, pulling up hundreds of humans in coordinated strikes that lasted exactly 17 minutes before the ships vanished back into hyperspace. Dr. Sarah Chen had been in her laboratory at Stanford when the ceiling suddenly became transparent, revealing the impossible bulk of an alien vessel. The last thing she remembered was the sensation of falling upward, her research papers scattering like leaves in a hurricane. When she woke, she was lying on a hard metal floor, surrounded by the confused voices of dozens of other humans. "Where are we?" someone asked in what sounded like German. "I don't know," replied another voice, this one with a heavy Russian accent. "But look at these walls. This is not human construction." Sarah pushed herself up, her scientific mind already analyzing their situation. The chamber was clearly designed for beings much larger than humans. The ceiling was at least 12 feet high, and the walls had a strange, organic quality that seemed to shift color in the dim light. More concerning were the viewing ports along one wall, behind which she could see massive shadows moving. "Everyone stay calm," said a man near the center of the group. He was tall, with the bearing of someone accustomed to command. "I'm Marcus Rivera, former U.S. Marine. We need to organize if we're going to figure out what's happening." A woman with short blonde hair and engineer's coveralls stepped forward. "Elena Kozlov, mechanical engineer. This place, it's like nothing I've ever seen. The materials, the construction methods, we're definitely not on Earth anymore." "David Park," said a lean man with weathered hands, survival instructor. "And I'm telling you right now, we're in a zoo. Look at those viewing ports. We're the exhibits." Their speculation was interrupted by a sound that made everyone freeze. A low, rumbling voice seemed to come from everywhere at once, speaking in a language that sounded like grinding stone and rushing water, but somehow, impossibly, they understood it. "Greetings, specimens. You have been selected for the honor of participating in the Great Hunt, the most sacred tradition of the Vorthok Empire. Your species has been evaluated and deemed suitable for sports. In one standard cycle, you will be released into the preserve, where you will provide entertainment for the nobility of our great civilization." The chamber erupted in panicked voices. People shouted questions, demands, pleas for explanation. But the voice continued, implacable and cold. "You will be provided with basic survival equipment and released into a controlled environment. Hunting parties will then enter the preserve to engage in the sacred hunt. Those who survive the longest will be honored in our records. Those who provide the most entertaining deaths will be remembered in our songs." A new voice cut through the chaos. "How many others have you done this to?" Dr. Chen had stepped forward, her voice steady despite the terror in her eyes. "You are the 407th species to be granted this honor," the voice replied. "Each has contributed to the glory of the hunt in their own way. The Koiri lasted 6 cycles, the Thraxians only 3. We expect you will fall somewhere in between." "What if we refuse?" Marcus demanded. "Refusal is not possible. The hunt begins at dawn." The voice faded, leaving the humans in stunned silence. They had been reduced to prey, sentenced to die for. The amusement of creatures they had never known existed. But as the initial shock wore off, something else began to emerge in their faces. Something the Vorthok had not seen in their previous 406 hunts. Anger, the dawn came not with sunrise, but with the activation of massive light panels that simulated daylight across the biodome. The preserve was enormous, perhaps 50 square kilometers of varied terrain. Forests, grasslands, rocky outcrops, and rivers had been carefully arranged to provide both cover and challenges. To the Vorthok, it was the perfect hunting ground. To the humans, it was a death trap. But death traps could be turned around. The 200 humans who had been captured were released at various points throughout the preserve. Each was given a simple survival kit, a knife, basic medical supplies, water purification tablets, and a crude shelter. The Vorthok expected them to scatter, to run blindly until they were picked off one by one. They did not expect the humans to immediately begin forming groups. Basic military principle, Marcus explained to the group that had gathered around him. Never fight alone if you can help it. We need to find the others, establish communication, and figure out how these things hunt. Dr. Chen nodded, studying the strange flora around them. Everything here is designed to look natural, but it's all carefully controlled. If we can understand the system, we might be able to use it against them. First priority is survival. David added, water, shelter, food. But we also need to learn about our enemies, study their patterns, their weaknesses. Alina was examining the tracking device embedded in each survival kit. They're monitoring us. Heart rate, location, stress levels. They want to know when we're scared, when we're dying. But what if we could use these to coordinate instead of just be tracked? The first Vorthok hunting party entered the preserve 3 hours later. They moved with the confidence of apex predators, their natural camouflage allowing them to blend seamlessly with the artificial environment. Their weapons were works of art as much as instruments of death, elegantly designed energy weapons that could kill from a distance or be used as melee weapons up close. They expected to find scattered, terrified humans hiding in whatever cover they could find. Instead, they found something unprecedented in the 406 hunts that had come before. They found an ambush. The humans had used their tracking devices to coordinate their movements. Gathering in groups of 10 to 15, they had studied the terrain, identified choke points, and prepared traps using nothing more than rocks, sticks, and the natural features of the preserve. When the first Vorthok hunting party entered what they thought was a section of empty forest, they walked directly into a coordinated attack. Rocks fell from carefully arranged positions in the trees. Pits lined with sharpened sticks opened beneath their feet. Humans attacked from multiple directions simultaneously, using their smaller size and superior numbers to overwhelm the larger, stronger aliens. The first Vorthok hunter to die in the preserve fell to a simple spear thrust delivered by Dr. Chen, who had never held a weapon in her life before that day. The second fell to a trap designed by Alina, who had used her engineering knowledge to create a simple but effective deadfall. The third was brought down by coordinated teamwork. 10 humans working together to overwhelm a single hunter in the observation chambers above the preserve. The Vorthok nobility watched in stunned silence as their hunters were eliminated. This was not how the hunt was supposed to work. The prey was supposed to run, to hide, to die in interesting ways. They were not supposed to fight back effectively. High Admiral Zekther felt a cold sensation in his chest as he watched the third hunting party enter the preserve. They were moving more cautiously now, using their technology to scan for threats. But the humans had already adapted to this. They had learned to use the tracking devices to create false signals, to mask their movements, to coordinate attacks across vast distances. "Sir," Sub-Commander Vex reported, her voice tight with something that might have been fear. "The humans are exhibiting unprecedented tactical coordination. They're not just surviving, they're learning. Each engagement teaches them more about our capabilities." Zekther watched as another of his hunters fell to a trap he didn't understand. The humans had somehow managed to electrify a water crossing, using salvaged components from fallen Vorthok equipment. The hunter's scream echoed through the preserve as he was electrocuted by his own technology. "Send in the next wave," Zekther ordered. "Double the numbers. These creatures are more resourceful than expected, but they're still just primitives with basic tools." But as the next wave of hunters entered the preserve, Zekther began to understand that he had made a terrible mistake. The humans weren't just surviving, they were evolving, adapting, learning from each encounter, and with each fallen Vorthok hunter, they were becoming more dangerous. The prey had become predators. The uprising by the 7th cycle. The Vorthok had lost more hunters than in the previous 50 hunts combined. The humans had not only survived, but had begun to thrive in the artificial environment. They had established a complex communication network using the tracking devices, created sophisticated traps and weapons from salvaged materials, and most disturbing of all, they had begun to actively hunt the Vorthak. Dr. Chen crouched behind a carefully camouflaged blind, watching a Vorthok patrol through the scope of a rifle she had assembled from fallen hunter equipment. The weapon was designed for beings with 4 arms and 6 eyes, but human ingenuity had found ways to modify it for bipedal use. Her finger rested on the trigger, waiting for the perfect moment. "Target is in position," she whispered into the communication device Alina had jury-rigged from Vorthok technology, confirming clear firing lanes. "Negative on the shot." Marcus's voice crackled back. "We need him alive." The information we gathered from the last prisoner suggests there's something bigger going on here. 3 cycles ago, the humans had done something that had never happened in the history of the Great Hunt. They had captured a Vorthok hunter alive. The interrogation had revealed information that changed everything. The preserve wasn't just a hunting ground for humans. It was one of dozens scattered across the galaxy, each containing different species, all for the entertainment of the Vorthok nobility. The captured hunter had also revealed something else. The Vorthok weren't just hunting for sport. They were hunting because they had forgotten how to fight real wars. Centuries of dominating weaker species had made them soft, arrogant, dependent on their technological superiority. They had never faced opponents who could adapt, who could learn, who could fight back effectively. Moving to intercept, David's voice joined the conversation. As the group's survival expert, he had become something more. He had become a hunter of hunters, using skills learned in Earth's wilderness to track and eliminate Vorthok with terrifying efficiency. The captured hunter had broken after 6 hours of interrogation, not through torture, but through something far more effective. The humans had made him watch recordings of his fellow hunters being systematically eliminated. They had shown him the statistics, the casualty rates, the mathematical certainty that the Vorthok were losing their own game. They're not warriors, Alina had realized during the interrogation. They're hunters. There's a difference. Hunters prey on the weak. Warriors fight equals. The psychological impact had been devastating. The captured Vorthok had revealed the locations of other preserves, the command codes for their technology, and most importantly, the location of the central control facility that monitored all the hunts. Now, as the hunting party moved through the forest, they were walking into a trap that went far beyond simple ambush. The humans had learned to use the Vorthok's own technology against them, to turn their hunting instincts into vulnerabilities, to transform their arrogance into weakness. "Contact in 30 seconds, Marcus whispered. "Remember, we need at least 1 alive for interrogation. The others are expendable." The attack came from 6 directions simultaneously. Humans dropped from the trees, emerged from concealed positions, and struck from unexpected angles. But this wasn't the desperate, scrambling ambush of the early cycles. This was a coordinated military operation executed with precision that would have impressed any army in the galaxy. The Vorthok hunters, for all their natural advantages, found themselves facing opponents who had studied their every move, analyzed their weaknesses, and prepared specifically for this encounter. Energy weapons that had been modified to human use, cut down to hunters before they could react. Traps that had been positioned with mathematical precision, eliminated to more. The remaining hunters found themselves surrounded, outgunned, and facing an enemy that had learned to fight their kind of war better than they could. "Surrender," Marcus called out in the Vorthok language that Dr. Chen had painstakingly learned from their prisoners. "You are surrounded, your weapons are inferior, your tactics are predictable. Surrender and live." The lead hunter, a massive specimen with ceremonial scars across his natural armor, raised his weapon defiantly. "Vorthok, do not surrender to prey." "Then you die like all the others," Alina replied, her voice carrying the cold certainty of someone who had watched too many friends die. The modified energy weapon in her hands charged with a sound like breaking glass. The hunter's defiance lasted exactly 3 seconds before a coordinated crossfire from 5 directions cut him down. The remaining Vorthok, seeing their leader fall, made the unprecedented decision to surrender. In the observation chambers above the preserve, High Admiral Zekther watched his hunters surrender to their former prey with something approaching panic. This was not just unexpected, it was impossible. In 406 previous hunts, no species had ever successfully fought back. None had ever captured Vorthok alive. None had ever forced a surrender. "Sir," Sub-Commander Vex reported, her voice shaking. "The humans are requesting communication. They want to negotiate." "Negotiate?" Zekther's voice rose to a roar. "We are the Vorthok. We do not negotiate with prey." "Sir, with respect, they're not prey anymore. They're something else." The communication came through on the command frequency, a clear violation of every protocol. But the humans had learned to hack Vorthok systems with the same frightening efficiency they had learned everything else. "This is Dr. Sarah Chen, speaking for the human collective." The voice was calm, professional, terrifying in its confidence. "We demand immediate cessation of the hunt, release of all captured species, and safe passage to our respective homeworlds." Zekther activated the communication system, his voice dripping with contempt. "You are prey. You make no demands. You will be hunted until you are extinct." Admiral, Chen's voice carried what might have been pity. "You don't understand what you're dealing with. Humans didn't become the dominant species on Earth by being prey. We became dominant by being the most successful predators in our planet's history. We didn't just hunt animals, we hunted other humans. We turned warfare into an art form, survival into a science. You've taken creatures that spent thousands of years learning to kill each other and given us a common enemy." "Impossible," Zekther spat. "You were primitives with basic tools. Admiral, in the 7 cycles since this hunt began, we have killed 63 of your hunters. We have captured 12 alive. We have reverse-engineered your technology, learned your language, and mapped your entire facility. We know about the other preserves. We know about the other species you've captured. And we know that your entire empire is built on the assumption that no prey will ever fight back effectively." The communication channel filled with a sound that made Zekther's blood run cold. It was laughter, human laughter. "You made one critical mistake, Admiral. You assumed that because we use tools, we're not dangerous. But tools don't make a species weak. They make them adaptable. And adaptability is what makes a predator successful." "What do you want?" Zekther found himself asking, the question torn from him by desperation. "We want to meet the other species you've captured. We want to teach them what we've learned. And then we want to show you what happens when all your prey decides to become predators." The communication ended, leaving Zekther staring at the viewing screen in horror. In the preserve below, the humans were moving with purpose, heading toward the other containment areas where different species were held. They weren't just planning to escape, they were planning to organize a rebellion. Over the next cycles, the Vorthok watched in growing terror as the humans did exactly what they had promised. They made contact with the other captured species, shared their knowledge, and began to organize a coordinated resistance. The Zelkari, with their natural camouflage abilities, became perfect scouts. The Thraxians, with their incredible strength, became shock troops. The Kaleri, thought extinct, had actually been hiding in the deepest parts of their preserve, and they brought knowledge of Vorthok technology that the humans had not yet discovered. Each species brought unique advantages, but it was the humans who provided the coordination, the tactical knowledge, and most importantly, the psychological warfare that began to break the Vorthok mentally. "They're not just fighting us," Sub-Commander Vex reported, after the 10th coordinated attack on Vorthok positions. They're teaching the others to fight like them. They're turning every species into humans. The final assault came at dawn on the 15th cycle. Every species in every preserve launched simultaneous attacks on their containment facilities. But it wasn't random violence. It was coordinated, planned, executed with military precision. The humans had taught them not just to fight, but to fight smart. The Vorthok hunters, bred for centuries to hunt weaker opponents, found themselves facing an enemy that had learned to fight like humans. And humans, as they discovered too late, were very good at fighting. High Admiral Zektha stood in his command center, watching his empire's greatest tradition collapse around him. The great hunt was over. The prey had become predators, and the Vorthok, who had ruled through fear and superiority for 3,000 years, were about to learn what it felt like to be hunted. "Sir," Sub-Commander Vex whispered, "they're requesting surrender terms." Zektha looked at the communication device, then at the screens showing the systematic destruction of his hunting fleets. The humans had not just won, they had taught an entire galaxy of species how to win. "Open the channel," he said quietly. Dr. Chen's voice filled the command center one final time. "Admiral, this is how it's going to work. You will release every species you've captured. You will provide them with transportation to their homeworlds. You will shut down the Great Hunt permanently, and you will never hunt sentient beings again. And if we refuse, then you'll discover why humans became the apex predators on a planet full of creatures that were bigger, stronger, and faster than we were. You'll learn why we're the only species that hunts for sport, and why that made us very good at hunting things that think they're hunters." The Great Hunt ended that day. The Vorthok Empire, built on the assumption that might makes right, discovered that intelligence, adaptability, and cooperation were forces more powerful than size or strength. The humans had not just survived, they had evolved the very concept of what it meant to be prey. And in the depths of space, on a small blue world orbiting a yellow star, humanity continued its existence, never knowing that they had already won the most important war in galactic history. The prey had become predators, and the galaxy would never be the same. Asterisk.